Hi, everybody. Just letting everybody know, I don't do public speaking, so we'll see how this goes. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Katelynn Coughlin, and I am Norah's mom. She's 5.5 years old, and we're from Ripon, Wisconsin. I want to start out by thanking Dylan for inviting me to share a little bit about our journey and Norah's speech and communication. I'd also like to give a little shout out to our speech therapist, Cheyenne Ulrich, who helped me with this speech and making it sound good. So when Norah was a baby, it started out pretty typical. She did some coos and babbling, a lot of crying. She didn't like other people. We celebrated her laughs and what we thought were very few early single words. As time went on, her language didn't develop in the typical way. As first-time parents, we were trying not to go down too many anxiety spirals, since she appeared to be hitting some milestones just on her own timeline. After a year when we joined our Birth to 3 program, they started to notice that she was farther behind than where she should be communication-wise. We then started biweekly therapies virtually due to still being in the height of the COVID. And then that continued to work on daily communication with repetition and introducing her to new vocabulary and descriptions of what we were doing and what she was doing, and just kind of building that vocabulary and bringing that into her world. We began to realize that communication was going to be one of the bigger mountains that we would have to climb, and it took years to see any major progress at all. Something important to know about Norah that we learned when she was 3 was that she also has an overarching visual impairment, so cortical visual impairment, or CVI. So this means that even though her eyes are healthy, her brain has trouble making sense of what she sees. This impacts her entire experience of the world, especially communication. Because she can't rely on visual cues the way that most people do, she leans heavily on auditory and tactile information. That's how she learns best, through hearing things and also touching things through a touch. It also means that a lot of typical assistive technology isn't a good fit for her. Visual-based tools, screens, or picture-based systems don't always work for her. We've had to get creative and make sure her supports are accessible to her, using real objects, consistent routines, auditory cues, hands-on modeling to help her understand and express herself. As Norah got older, communication delays began to impact other parts of her life. Socially, she wanted to connect and participate, but her words couldn't keep up with her thoughts. And with her slower processing time, she often needs a pause, a moment to think, hear, and then respond. If that moment is rushed or missed, so is her opportunity to speak. Another limitation can be others' ability to understand her at times. If you're around Norah frequently, you come to understand her. You understand that she has certain words for like her favorite toys or objects around the house, or what she wants. If you're not around her, you may not get that. Over the years, it's been very difficult to Over the years, it has been very difficult when we have been unable to figure out what she's been trying to ask for, especially with her going to school. She has a favorite toy at school that we don't have at home. I've had to text her teacher multiple times asking and sending videos, what is this? To try and figure out what this might mean. She gets very frustrated, which is understandably so, which then makes us feel really bad. We have also been concerned about her ability to be able to communicate when she's in pain due to the additional symptoms that come with KIF1A. We're still trying to figure out how to navigate this and what looking at her physical cues to also help us in as much of, using her physical cues to also help cue us in as much as her language will assist us. Norah tends to copy what is said sometimes, so it's hard for us to sometimes trust what she's saying in what she's actually feeling is true or not. Norah also has a fascinating way of holding on to language. Sometimes she'll hear a phrase that gets a big reaction. So maybe a friend will say something funny, or she heard someone laugh at something that somebody said. Then she'll repeat that same phrase later, sometimes even days later. It's like she's trying to understand what that moment meant. Norah is studying language, not just as communication, but almost as social currency, how people connect with each other. Over time, with consistent therapy and support, she's made incredible progress. Speech therapy has been a cornerstone for us. She now communicates in full sentences with prompting and independently uses 2 to 3 word phrases and sometimes even longer. That's a huge leap forward from where we began. We've also tried music therapy, which has been a big love for her. She's found it to be a fun way to add more skills to our time, and she really enjoys that. But Norah's communication is still scripted and tied to specific routines. She'll sometimes get stuck on a phrase and use it only for one context. For example, when she plays with the dollhouse at school, she always says, "hid in the closet." That's the phrase that she's connected to that toy. And that's what she'll say every single time she plays with that toy. It gives her predictability and meaning. Looking ahead, I hope her communication continues to grow, not just in complexity, but in flexibility. I want Norah to be able to share her own opinions, her humor, and even her frustrations, her stories. I want her to have access to friendships, learning, and belonging, not just because people around her are being kind and accommodating, but because she has the tools to fully participate. And just as importantly, I want the world around her to understand that communication doesn't look the same for everybody. When we slow down, when we offer choices that match her sensory and cognitive needs, when we listen, her voice is absolutely there. And it is a beautiful story that she tells. Thank you.